Hello, welcome along to the Sport and Life Racing podcast. And this week we have Billy Nash, Ben Linfoot and Graham Cunningham on hand to tackle all the hot topics. We're going to be talking Betfair's Super Saturday action from last weekend. We're going to look ahead to Ascot and Haydock coming up this Saturday with one or two key news lines thrown into the mix for good measure as well. And to kick off, I'm going to wind way back. I'm going to wind back to Shishkin and the Denman Chase. Ben, he did what most people expected of him that day. No issues over his jumping, seemingly. That was good to see, I thought, after the odd incident at the end of the King George. He'd sort of knocked into himself that day, according to Nicky Henderson, was feeling sorry for himself a little bit. But what were the Linfoot marks out of 10 for Gold Cup bound Shishkin?
Yeah, I'd give him a solid 8. I thought there was one or two moments over his fences where you think he'll have to jump sharper than that to win a Gold Cup. You know, he looked left, didn't he, at two of them, the 3rd and the 13th, and he got in a bit tight to the last. And if you're being harsh, you would say you would have to brush up on that to trouble a peak form Galloping de Champs. But listen, it was good, wasn't it? I mean, obviously after refusing at Ascot, coming down 2 out in unfortunate circumstances in the King George, where he probably would have won, held on to beat Hewitt, you might say. It was just good to see him get his head in front. And the more I look at him, the more it just seems obvious he should have run in a Gold Cup before. He's just absolutely crying out for a stamina test, isn't he, this horse, I think. And it's all systems go, at least, to the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Listen, you can have a go at the form, possibly, in terms of what it means and what he has to find to beat Galloping de Champs. He does have to find at least £7, according to the official handicap, and maybe a bit more. You know, Hitman was in second. He got £6 and he's rated 152 these days. And we know he's not resolute in a finish. He came there travelling and just, you know, perhaps didn't want to go through with it again. But I thought he ran well, Hitman. We'll talk about his Ryanair claims possibly in a second. And I would look at things positively for Shishkin. And I do think he's the main threat to Galloping de Champs.
GC, there was a hint post-race that the cheek pieces might come back for the Gold Cup. I heard from Nicky. He was talking about the brown ones. He doesn't like the white sheepskin, apparently. But any alarm bells ringing for you? Obviously, it was Ascot where he tried the sheepskin.
Yeah, I concur with Ben in that I think he won easily, Shishkin. I think it was largely hands and heels from the last as Hitman came off the bridle and Protectorate began to rally. But I think he was bang in control. What we can say for sure is that he's one of a small core of staying chasers who are definitely capable of running to marks of 170 plus. But I will ring at least a minor alarm and say that the last two festivals for Shishkin, we know he's shone at a couple, but in 2022, one of the worst performances you've ever seen from a hot festival favourite in the Champion Chase. Absolutely lamentable. At 5 to 6, I think he was. And it was even money or thereabouts for last year's Ryanair Chase. He was even money. And although he rallied, stayed on to finish second, there was a ragged awkwardness about that performance early on and through the first half of the race that was a bit alarming. So I think the question to answer for Shishkin is perhaps the festival itself, because when you've had one stinker a hot favourite for a festival and another pretty ragged performance last year, the question needs asking. All the innate abilities there, but I just have a little alarm bell ringing about what'll happen when he goes back to the white heat of the festival.
Just likes being the centre of attention, I think, doesn't he? Billy, we know Galloping de Champs he's brilliant on soft ground. Is Shishkin maybe one to fear if it dries up during the back end of festival week?
There is a possibility, Matt, that he might have a little bit more speed than Galloping de Champs. But look, I don't know. I don't think we saw anything from Shishkin that you wouldn't have expected at the weekend. Strictly on a ratings point, he ran to 170. He has a time form rating of 176 with the squiggle. So he didn't have to be quite at his best. It was a performance you would have expected from Shishkin. His very best effort in time form ratings is 181. That's currently what we have Galloping de Champs rated as well. That 181 that Shishkin earned was in the Clarence House versus an Energamine back in January 2022. So, you know, he's a 10-year-old now. Is he still capable of running to that mark? I'm not sure he is. Gallopin, of course, has run to it already this year. So he's a very live contender in the Gold Cup, but I think he might need a few things to go his way to be actually, to win one at this stage. And as GC mentioned there, he's just got a few too many question marks hanging over him for my liking.
Billy, is there
Yes,
any
sir.
sort of discussion on the potential removal of a squiggle in this situation?
Yeah, I'm sure it will be discussed, yeah. But like the fact that he has refused to race so recently as 2 or 3 runs ago, I think we might consider leaving it on for the time being.
Leave it on, Billy, and then take it off if he jumps off smoothly.
We could do that, yeah.
After he jumped the first fence.
In fairness, GC, he beat a couple of nearly men, hasn't he, in Hitmen and Protectorat, possibly a bit harsh calling Dan Skelton's horse that, but what for that pair now? I was thinking 152 Hitman. He's blown his mark a little bit again. He's gone up another £5 for that. Handicapping probably out, but Ryanair and Protectorat could join him maybe.
Yeah, well, Hitman ran well in the Ryanair last year, and he might well do so again. But Ben touched on it. He looked likely to finish clear in second, whether it was Protectorat rallying or Hitman just finding less than look likely, or a combination of both. I don't know, but I couldn't be really fancying Hitman to outbattle a few strong stayers up the hill. And I suspect that Protectorat, if he went for the Ryanair, might be the better prospect of the pair. I think they're both about 20-1, and it is a race that's ripe for something going really well at a price this year's Ryanair. Protectorat, I thought, ran really well. I backed him, to be honest. I thought he might be a little bit of value. He did a lot right, but he's just not quite good as Shishkin when they're both on their A game, is he?
He's not. Okay, game spirit thoughts. We've said it so many times, and it won't be the last time, but we do like to rule horses out completely for like the rest of the season after 1 or 2 poor runs. But Edwardstone was back on it. He was good, Scoop, wasn't he? This sort of they're not machines, are they? Look, he was quite fashionable for the Ryanair chase. People were considering, and obviously they gave it a whirl over 2.5. But he's dropped back to 2, and he was really on his A game again.
It was, and it was the change in tactics, wasn't it? Going forward, he seemed to absolutely relish that situation. And it just he made his mind up for Tom Cannon, didn't he? Just with the way he was racing. And I think you've got to go that way in the Champion Chase now. You've got to go from the front with him, because he's always been a horse who has been held up, really, hasn't he? For a late charge over 2 miles, even when he was a novice coming through and winning races. I think the most prominent he was been before Saturday was in the Arkle about 12 runs ago when he won. So I think they will go forward with him, and it was just good to see him enjoying himself again, because it had been a bit of a nearly disaster season, really, hasn't it? Getting beaten by John Bon a couple of times, then just hated things going up in trip to 2.5 behind Banbridge at Kempton in the Silviniaco Conti Chase. He was way too keen that day to do himself any justice, and back at 2 miles, he absolutely loved it.
JC, this is, you were mentioning some of the odds from last year. This horse went off 15-8 for the Champion Chase. He's got decent credentials, hasn't he? And it was quite good to be reminded quite how good he is.
Yeah, the tactics, I agree with Ben, were really interesting. They worked a treat, just going bombs away. He just seemed pretty much back to his A game. And I thought it was interesting. I caught Alan King's interview afterwards, or one of Alan King's interviews, and it seems he's gone back to perhaps an oldish playbook. He was definitely hinting that he'd been easy on quite a few horses, and he said all of a sudden he'd said, no, let's drill him 3 times up the hill.
Yeah,
not every day, but various days. Get him really working hard for the money at home, and for whatever reason, that horse seemed to fire again. Now, carrying out those bombs away tactics with John Bon and El Fabiolo stalking you at Cheltenham is a different kettle of fish. But I'd be inclined to agree again with Ben that they work so well at Newbury that why would you not give it another lash, trying to beat El Fab and John Bon next month?
Now, Billy, speaking of Edwardstone coming back in from the cold, we should touch on the latest forfeit stages for the novice races at the festival. I thought a couple of horses really stood out here. They were out or at least they were doubtful, and are seemingly still in the frame. And they're both owned by JP McManus, Billy. In the pocket, it sounds like he's been back in training a few weeks now, according to Henry de Bromhead. And we've got a Rocco as well. I don't know if you wanted to mention either of those two.
Just when we thought they were out, they pulled them back in, Matt. Yeah, very interesting in the pocket. I assumed in the pocket was out for the season, but no, Henry de Bromhead said he's had him back in training for the last couple of weeks, which is very interesting. He needs to be supplemented to run at Cheltenham because he's not. Right. I don't think he's actually entered in any of those novice races yet, but they could supplement him, and he didn't rule it out. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if they thought about supplementing him for the Arkle. I don't think JP has an actual live Arkle contender at the moment. And let's not forget, in the pocket, finished a good fourth in the Supreme last year, and he won the Topham at Aintree. So, he's very effective at that trip. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did get to Cheltenham, if they decide to supplement him for that. I think he's a horse that's going to be better going out and trip. But obviously JP has fact to file for the Turners, and they probably wouldn't want to step him up to 3 miles just yet. So he's an intriguing contender if they do manage to get him back for Cheltenham. And even if they don't, there's Haydock and Punchestown on the horizon as well. So there's plenty of prize, and even Aintree. Let's not forget Aintree. So it would be great to see him back because he is a proper Grade 1 horse. Iroko as well, another one that I was absolutely convinced was out for the season, but he made an impressive chasing debut at Warwick. So yeah, if they get him back, he'll certainly add to whatever race he turns up in as well. Yeah,
I wondered if that in the pocket might be one for the old Powers Gold Cup, but Iroko, Scoop, he's quite a hard one to get a handle on, isn't he? Because he looked really good at Warwick. That form hasn't worked out. It doesn't sort of amount to a great deal, does it? The bare form of what he beat at Warwick, but it was a smooth transition to fences, and we know he's talented from the Martin Pipe.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the Warwick form a couple of different ways, can't you? Because Get a Tonic came out and won over hurdles, and Kilbeg King has done okay progressing over fences, third, of course, behind Le Francais at Kempton at Christmas. But he was just so impressive that day, Iroko, wasn't he? Obviously, we know he's capable at the festival, having won the Martin Pipe, and his chasing debut couldn't have been any better, really. I mean, he won it on the bridle, and he won easily. And it was a shame that he was ruled out for the season with a foot problem after that, but it looks like he might be back as well. Ollie Greenall interviewed after his winner at Newbury on Saturday, saying that he's ready and he's training, and it's just a case of whether they'd be happy running him with such little experience in the heat of the festival. Maybe they could run him at Kempton in the Pendle or something, I'm not sure. But he's an interesting strand if he does run. Obviously, he's owned by JP McManus, and I think his only entries to Turners. And he's, if he's got fact to file for that race, would he run Iroko against him? I'm not sure he would. But he's a fascinating horse for his young trainers to go to war with if he is ready for Cheltenham.
He's short, isn't he? They're not being missed in the market, these horses. I mean, I think Iroko's about 5-1 in place, 6-1. I found that really quite surprising. He's so short, given he's so inexperienced.
Yeah, I mean, he is, but he was just dead impressive on debut, wasn't he? And being a festival winner as well, having that in your back pocket's always a thing punters look for as they, coming up with the bets for March. So it's sort of understandable. There aren't loads of these good horses out there, are there?
No, very true. You wouldn't necessarily want to be laying each way bets at 8-10-1, would you, about some of these novice races? GC, another JP horse we need to mention. He's already borne considerable fruit this season. Berico Lord, he was bloody impressive, I thought, in the Betfair Hurdle. He's gone up another 9. He went up £8 for winning the Greatwood Hurdle in November. Soft ground, strong gallop, looks ideal for him. Absolutely.
And de Boinville has been really good on that horse, both in the Greatwood, super strong form, and at Newbury, just patient, stalk, pounce. And I thought it was an emphatic win. And he's making his way through handicaps really strongly. Now, that looked a very, very deep Betfair Hurdle last week. There are plenty of horses who'll come out and run well in big handicap hurdles over the next few weeks. I think the question for connections now is, do you wait for the Cheltenham Festival and perhaps go for the county hurdle? But there's a race at Kelso week and a bit before, the More Battle Hurdle, which I think is worth pretty much the same money to the winner. Either way, I wouldn't put it past him to go close in another big handicap hurdle, because he's got that stalk and pounce style, which makes it pretty tricky for the handicapper to really get a grip on him. In retrospect, easy to be wise with hindsight, you shouldn't be surprised that he didn't really shine in that steadily run race at Ascot, where they hit the line in about 3 minutes 47, something like that. It was just not anything like a test of strong galloping and then quickening off that pace. But he's a pretty smart horse now, and he's won the 2 biggest handicap hurdles of the season, and he's won them both really well. I've got a bit of breaking news when you're ready, chaps.
Ooh,
I'm more than ready.
A bit of breaking news. Scoop. Leading French trainer Carlos Lafont-Pariat to retire after a long career. Did I say French trainer? He's of course Spanish, but he's trained in France for a long time with all sorts of big time horses.
Art winner.
So, of course, he was Salemia beating the wretched Orfev in the final prides. But Falco, Recoletos, lots and lots of other good horses. So I don't know when he's going to retire, whether it's forthwith or whether it's one of these end of the season jobs. But Carlos Lafont-Pariat, flat story, pretty big flat story in France. He's not going to train for too much longer.
Well, we're on a slightly flat note there, Billy. Castle des Mottes was from France. Darrell was required by the blacksmith before they offered the Betfair Hurdle. We've dived in and out of the Betfair Hurdle. I'm so excited. It's thrown me a little bit, but Castle des Mottes probably worth a pass after that sort of setback pre-race.
I think he has to be, Matt. It's very hard to quantify how much that affects horses having to be reshod before races, but it's never a good thing. It's never something that you'd like to see. And I think in the circumstances, the fact it was his first run for 8 months, I thought he ran okay. I mean, he looked briefly in the straight. He looked like he was going to play a part in the finish. His kind of effort petered out a small bit. Interestingly, he used to wear a tongue tie in France, which they didn't have on him in the Betfair Hurdle. I wonder if that's something that might go back on in future. But either way, I think I'd certainly like to see him again. I think I wouldn't be at all surprised if he put that run behind him next time. And, if he turns up in a festival handicap, which I'm sure he will, he's one that you'd have to be taking seriously again. But as the lads were saying, I mean, you'd have to say the first 2 in that race. I know they've gone up another bit. Like you said, the winner's gone up £9. The second has gone up £6 or £8. But the 2 of them came well clear. They look like well handicapped horses, and they'll be very interesting wherever they go next.
Lads, did you see the coverage, the pre-race coverage of long delay because of Darrell and his blacksmith working on Oracle? But they had Luke Harvey up at a hurdle, practice hurdle, and it was Harry Cobden on 25 to 1 chance, but various people had backed ditto, and Luke Harvey said something like, "It's not ideal," and Harry Cobden said straight away, deadpan, he said, "This horse has run its race." He said, "I can feel his heart beating underneath me now." The stress and the hype had clearly got to him. He was the first off the bridle. He began to tail off at halfway and was pulled up. So it shows how a delay like that, nobody's fault, of course, no blame apportioned, but a lengthy delay like that for a highly tuned athlete can be very damaging to the performance.
I saw that post-race, that comment that Cobden had reported that he basically got too wound up in the preliminaries. Scoop, was there anything else to take from the Betfair Hurdle? Obviously, Loda Sud mentioned the stablemate Favois run quite an eye-catching race, I thought, under Heidi Palin.
Yes, he ran okay, didn't he? Massive price, Favois at the weekend, but ran well. But the one I thought that you have to take out of the race is this Doddy the Great, who was 4th for Nicky Henderson. I mean, he was held up right at the back, came through from near last to 4th, made a mistake 2 out, got a little bit hampered as well, was running on at the end. His marks stayed the same, 1-3-2. And he has only had 4 hurdles runs. That was the 4th hurdle run of his life because of the problem he's had. And I'm sure there's a big pot in this horse. Not sure where he'll go. Did you say he was being aimed at the Scottish Champion Hurdle or something?
Oh,
yeah, that
enough around there, would he?
That was the idea, wasn't it?
I think they can aim bigger, can't they? I don't know. I think that, county hurdle, something like that. He's got to be a massive player wherever he goes.
Yeah, 1-3-2. You'd be, you're not
Where
going
would
back
he get
many,
in? I know, yeah.
You're not going back many years when it'd be a doubt to get in, but you never know. Like, you could run him in the Coral Cup or the Martin Pipe, but yeah, loads of those from the Betfair Hurdle are going to rock up in Cheltenham Festival handicaps. We're going to have to dissect it when we know the final fields, we know the ground, and we know everything else.
2 quickies. Dan Skelton had 3 of the first 6, which is, it's quite an achievement. That Knickerbocker Glory did by far the best of the front runners, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that. He finished well beaten. That look away, he doesn't half jump well, and he's a big, good-looking horse. He'll be a really nice novice chaser for next year, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. Over in Ireland, Billy, we saw Allegory Devassi. That was Nace on Saturday. She seems to have teed up a shot at the Mare's Chase, Mrs. Paddy Power at Cheltenham.
Right back to her best, I thought, Matt. Much more encouraging. She ran a very flat race the time before at Fairyhouse for no apparent reason, but interestingly, it was her first ever go at 2 miles since Willie has got her, dropping back to the minimum trip. Now, they went quite hard up front. Mascad and Riviere de Tel kind of took each other on from an early stage, which set it up nicely for her, but she won really well. She was well on top at the finish. The one issue with Allegory Devassi is it just seems to take her a while to warm up into her jumping, because again at Naas, the first 2 or 3 fences, she was a bit hairy. Certainly at the last with the circuit to run, she nearly jumped out through the wing of it, So she just does seem to take a bit of time to get into her rhythm. Once she does, she's a very good jumper. And like I said, she won well at the end. That was right up to her best on time form ratings. It still leaves her about £5 or £6 to find with Dino Blue, should the 2 of them meet at Cheltenham, which I assume they will. But at this stage, they would look to be the 2 front runners for that race, definitely.
And a quick line on American Mike from Navan on Sunday. Did Gordon mention the Irish Grand National as a possible target? Did I mishear that?
I wouldn't be at all surprised if he did, because if you look at that horse's pedigree, it absolutely screams stamina. It was the first time they tried him over 3 miles, and which is kind of surprising, really, because his first start over hurdles last year, Matt, he won a maiden hurdle at Down Royal over an extended 2.6. So they were kind of messing with his trip last year. They dropped him back to 2. They tried him at 2.5. But certainly stepping up to 3 miles seemed to bring about a nice bit of improvement at the weekend. I wonder if perhaps they did it with one eye on the National Hunt Chase, because he wouldn't have been qualified prior to the weekend, so that will qualify him for that if they decide to run him there. But yeah, a race like that or the Irish National would look to be absolutely where he should be going now, because like I said, looking at his pedigree, he's stamina laden. So I think I can't imagine we'll see him at less than 3 miles that often in the future.
And I do want to get all 3 of your thoughts, really, I think, on this Brighter Days Ahead, because she blew me away on the same card. And this Mare's Novice Hurdle's looking pretty tasty now. Billy, you quickly, we'll stick with you.
Brighter Days Ahead, Matt, is it's very easy to pick holes in her form, because I'm not sure she has beaten an awful lot of consequence, but it's very hard to crab her because she's turned up to the racecourse 5 times and she's been really impressive on 5 occasions. She absolutely looks the part. She's a half-sister, of course, to Caldwell Potter and Mighty Potter, so she has the breeding, she has the looks, and she was really impressive again last weekend. Now, the one thing about last weekend, it was 2.5 on heavy ground at Navan, and she absolutely powered up the hill. So dropping back to 2 miles on quicker, what I'd imagine will be quicker ground at Cheltenham, mightn't be ideal for her. But either way, she's a Grade 1 winner in waiting, this mare. She's a very good mare, and we're going to hear loads more about her.
It's good. We've got 3 good ones in this Mare's Novice, I think, by the looks of things, haven't we? Where do you stand currently? I know closer to the time you might want to look even beyond them, but 3 nice mares.
Yeah, definitely. The best from Britain looks to be the Fergal O'Brien trade mare, doesn't she? Dysart Enos, who's put together a terrific winning sequence and looked so good last time at Doncaster, albeit at prohibitive odds. But I think that's the same for all these mares, really. You saw Brighter Days Ahead winning at 1-3 at the weekend, and they just look better, don't they, than their contemporaries? And it's when we get them all together in the Mare's Novice, we're going to find out. And Jade de Grugy for Willie Mullins, she's done it over 2 mile 2 last time in Grade 3 company. So for me, she probably just edges it with the trip in mind, bearing what Billy said. But I think they're 3 good mares, and can't wait to see them race against each other.
They'll be giving Fergal's £5, won't they, GC?
Yeah, but that's part of the problem with this, multitude of opportunities at the festival now, that pretty good horses, very bright prospects, can get there without being almost remotely tested, can't they? So you have Brighter Days Ahead, Jade de Grugy and Dysart Enos, and they really haven't come off the bridle in any meaningful way. So you're just guessing how much is in the locker when they're finally asked to compete in a really severely competitive race. And I find it tricky to assess because they've all been very impressive in different ways. Agree with what Billy said. Physically, Brighter Days Ahead looks the type of horse who should be around in pretty good races for quite a while, I think.
And one with the big brother will not be around at Cheltenham. Caldwell Potter, GC, quick line on that development.
Yeah, he's apparently, you know, had €740,000 world record fee for a jumper. I completely get the decision to take the time. I'm just wondering why nobody said to Paul Nicholls, what do you mean by acclimatise? The climate's pretty similar in Somerset to Ireland. Now, if he said, well, I'll expand, it's a different regime. You know, I need to see him school. I need to get a feel for what his optimum distance is, etc. I need to hear from his work rider, 100%. But use one word like acclimatise, and I think somebody asked, what do you mean by that? Because I'm not exactly sure. I have an idea what he might mean by that, but I'm not certain. Either way, they've mentioned the dreaded words Gold Cup already, so the stakes have been raised for Caldwell Potter.
Well, that's the trouble as well. People jump to certain conclusions, don't they? And they will jump to the conclusion that when he says, you know, we might look at Aintree, that taking a young horse to Cheltenham might be detrimental to that horse's long-term future. Now, that is obviously a concerning situation if that's the case. But as you say, if no one's going to ask him to flesh out that case and really clarify what he means, then we're still a little bit in the dark about what he means. So we're going to have to sit tight with that one.
I did like one of John Hales's comments was €740,000, by the way. I'm not going to lie. The fact that he's grey was one of the attractions.
Yes. Yeah, would they have gone that far if he wasn't grey? That was the great question. He won't be going. Scoop, I suspect Ben Pauling will be going with this handstands. He was quite impressive in the Sydney Banks last Thursday. Small field, but soft ground. He was also getting £5, wasn't he, from the runner-up Django Bay. But Harry Cogden, he sounded quite complimentary after the race, and it's hard to crab him now. This horse is 3 from 3 as a hurdler.
Yeah, exactly. He's done nothing wrong, has he? This son of Getaway for Ben Pauling. He's won 4 in a row, including his point-to-point, and this was his stiffest test by a long way last week at Huntingdon. Obviously, having to take on a Grade 1 winner in Django Bay, won at Aintree over Christmas. Obviously, that horse had to give him the £5 and ran well himself because he was a bit short of room and he was a bit keen, wasn't he? But yeah, handstands. He looks a nice prospect. You know, there was more than just those two in the field as well. This Diamond Ray of Joe Tizard, he can't jump a hurdle at all, but he looks a lovely chasing prospect. So I think it was a good little race. And we've seen it in this type of contest before, haven't we, with Ben Pauling winning it quite easily and going on to the festival and winning. He did it with Willoughby Court, who won at Warwick, won the old Leamington that's now defunct. But yeah, I thought it was a good performance from handstands. He'll obviously have to step up again to get involved at the festival. If he goes for that bear in Bingham, he could bump into, you know, 2 or 3 Irish monsters. So he's probably about the right price, but he's developing on the right trajectory, isn't he?
Yeah, and Cobden, great here, GC, just amazing. The guy is riding out of his skin. I think he's genuinely worth £6 or £7 at the minute, and it's just good to see him in this title race with both he and Sean Bowen fully fit and seemingly enjoying the rivalry. I think
I don't know Harry Cobden,
between them.
I find him a very intriguing character. He's clearly a high quality rider. He's showing that week in, week out. He would like to win a Jockey's Championship, and he's going to give it a lash this time. But he's already saying, this will be one and done if I get it. This will be the one and only time I have a go at it. He wants to prioritise quality over quantity by and large. And then, was it yesterday or the day before, and Sean Bowen snagged a winner, his first back since injury. Sean got off the winner and said, well, I think Harry's at a cattle market today.
Yeah.
And I hope he goes to a few more in the next few weeks. So he's an intriguing character. I think he's a bit of a throwback to those jockeys who worked hard but knew that there were other things in life, you know.
Yeah, likes his shooting by all accounts as well, and his farming. Billy, I'm going to come to you. We've got to talk Willie Mullins. Obviously, we'll go on to the media day that was held earlier this week, but sadly we've heard today the passing of Willie's mother. This is Maureen Mullins. Her and husband Paddy have a daughter, 4 sons. That's Sandra, Willie, Tom, Tony and George. I think I'm correct. She obviously leaves some legacy, passing away at the age of 94.
She does indeed. I didn't know Maureen Mullins personally, but she was a very regular sight on Irish racecourses up until really recently, Matt. I believe she opened the new weighing room in Gordon as recently as January of this year. So, she's not far off her 95th birthday. She used to make Cheltenham pretty much every year, bar COVID, as far as I can remember. Or, she used to always turn up there. And yeah, like you said, she leaves an indelible mark on Irish racing, really. I read this morning, actually, where Tony said that she had a €20 bet on Willie's winner of the bumper at Thurles yesterday because her grandson Charlie was on it. So, that's the sort of interest the woman had in racing. She's going to be sorely missed, and, sympathies have to be passed on to the entire Mullins family.
What a life. Imagine 94 years of age to ride at a reasonable level yourself, to beat your own daughter in a point-to-point, to have your husband, you being one of the driving forces, Paddy Mullins, in him taking on international challenges. Then Dawn Run comes along, and then to see your kids and your grandkids absolutely excel for decades on decades and decades, and to be there firsthand. That's a life well lived, isn't it?
It is, well said. I have wondered, is this Maureen, the horse, partly named after her, Billy? Do we know? I know it's obviously Shishkin family, isn't it? But
yeah, the spelling is a kind of a mishmash of the two, but yes, it is named in honor of Maureen Mullins. So yeah, I mean, you'd never know. That name might be up in lights again at Cheltenham in a few weeks' time, Matt.
Absolutely. Right, comes round once a year, Billy, and not everyone buys into it quite as much as you. But I'm not talking Valentine's Day. It is the Mullins Media Day before Cheltenham, and no stone unturned at Close Sutton. Lo and behold, Billy, your sneaky one, your long-term project, Sa Majeste, talk of the bloody town, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Noble Yates might have done for me already, Matt. To be honest, I was kind of hoping he'd get a handicap mark somewhere, but the fact that he beat Noble Yates at Limerick and Noble Yates went on to win the Cleve Hurdle might have blown that out of the water. So yes, I was delighted to hear that he was getting favourable mentions, but like I said, I'm not so confident he's going to get a nice handicap mark anymore, I'm afraid.
That's it. There is a mark showing, isn't there, on that would be his Irish mark, is it? It's 140. Is that correct?
Oh, I didn't. The last time I looked, he didn't have one. So
I've seen a mark pop up. It's 140, I think, but I presume that must be in Ireland, unless it's
I would assume so.
over here.
Yeah, I would assume so. That's the kind of mark I thought he might get. Now, obviously, the BHA handicapper will have a different opinion, maybe, but 140 is not beyond the realms of possibility. So yeah, it something in around there, I'd be quite happy with.
Yeah, you were not alone with him, but you were hats off to you for talking about him before the turn of the year, I think. But who else popped up, Scoop? Any other names? I had Absurd on my list. He's about 8-1 now for the County Hurdle. Lisnagar Fortune was another one that got a mention. And maybe I'll come back to you, Billy, about this Asian Master. But Scoop, was there anything that came to light after Willie's yard?
Well, GC's already talked about the Gold Cup, the dreaded Gold Cup being mentioned at an early stage for Caldwell Potter. Well, a few eyebrows were probably raised when he said the same about Mashborough when talking about his Triumph Hurdle horse, because that seemed to come out of nowhere. But obviously he's on a huge pedestal now, isn't he? After being mentioned in with that in mind. I always think it's fascinating, the Willie Mullins Media Day. I've been on it myself a few times, and it's trying to read between the lines a lot of the time, isn't it? Because obviously no destinations confirmed for Ballyburn or Fact to File. And Ballyburn, I don't know, he's been hammered in the Supreme betting. I think he's odds on and drifted.
We got pelters last week. We got social media pelters, didn't we, for suggesting he could yet run in the Bearing Bingham, but
I still think he could. You know,
So
when you read between the lines of his quotes, and he's saying, look, on looks and on breeding, on everything he's done earlier in his career, I'd say Bearing Bingham. Well, hello. That could well come into his thoughts the week before the festival, couldn't it? I still think it could run in that race.
Yeah, another little subplot, and I'm not sure this is a direct quote, but it's pretty much the gist. It's sort of Willie thinking aloud in front of the media and saying, well, he's owned by Ronnie Bartlett, and Mystical Power's owned by JP, and they're good friends. And will they want to run against each other? And you think, oh Christ, what chance are we playing?
Nobody knows, as they say. Billy, just that Asian Master, he's a fascinating project. He ran in a novice hunter chase last May. He's won two out of two over hurdles. He's a massive price for the Sky Bet Supreme and the other race. Now, yeah, there's a bit of sort of lebake about him, isn't there? He could just run an almighty race.
He's a massive price and he's a massive jockey, Matt. He will definitely have the tallest jockey at the festival. Tony Costello, who rides him, I think is about 6'5". But yeah, a really interesting horse. Like you said, he's come a circuitous route. Willie doesn't have him that long. He was fourth in a novice hunter's chase at Tipperary when trained by the Costellos, and Willie's got him. He's after winning two 2-mile novice hurdle. He won a maiden hurdle and a novice hurdle for Willie. He's a really interesting horse. He's actually been in the news for other reasons this week, Matt, because his former trainer was apparently he tested positive for a prohibited substance at a point that he won. Now, it was the trainer was pretty much exonerated. It was just a kind of a mix-up that he has two horses in training. Both of them were on medication, and it looks as if the wrong horse got the wrong medication. He was given a fine and it was suspended. So basically he was given a slap on the wrist and told, do better the next time, which I don't know if that's the way we want to be going down with cases like that in Ireland. That obviously is not the horse's fault, and he has since joined Willie Mullins and he's taken his form up to another level. Now, I say another level, it's still a good bit below what's required to win a Cheltenham Festival novice hurdle. So he's an interesting contender, but at this stage, no more than that.
No, very fair. GC, we need to discuss. We're switching back to the flat, I'm afraid. We need to talk this City of York Stakes snub. This came to light after the European Patent Committee, the old EPC, as I call them. They couldn't agree unanimously that this EBOR meeting, this Group 2 race over 7 furlongs, deserves Group 1 status, despite a real push for it in the recent seasons. I guess William Darby and York could be calling them something else at the moment, GC.
Yeah, they're pushing hard to get this City of York Stakes upgraded. But it's not just on your winners. I believe it's based on the rating of the first 3 at the end of the season. I think that's pretty close to the mark. And I'll go through the horses who finished 2nd and 3rd in this race in the last 5 years, for example. Audience and Sandrine, Pogo and Sandrine, Highfield Princess and Glorious Journey, One Master and Queen Jojo, Lawrence and Kate Byron. So you can see you've got a few stars in there. You've got Lawrence, One Master, was a good filly, Highfield Princess, of course. But you've got a few others, Queen Jojo, Kate Byron, Pogo. They're not meaningful Group 1 horses. So I think it's perhaps as much a mathematical decision as it is a political one. Politics might come in, and that you would say, well, you're sticking another Group 1 target in the middle of the Sussex Stakes over a mile and the Prix de Moulin over a mile, not long after. I'm not privy to the exact conversations, but on balance, my gut feeling is that, and I love York, I adore York, and I understand why they love this to be a Grade 1, and they'd pump more money in it, I'm sure, if they could get it up there. But I'm not sure that a few of those names would have you thinking, yeah, that is an absolute nailed-on Group 1 contender waiting to happen.
No, Ascot's long-distance cup scoop got the same short shrift from the EPC. I can sort of understand that, but what in God's name was I was reading about the Commonwealth Cup under review, apparently.
Yeah, well, I think it's absolutely right that they are stringent and it has to be unanimous. I mean, you only have to look at the jumps programme to see where you've got too many graded races and too few good horses, and you wouldn't want the same sort of thing happening on the flat. And I think it's right and correct that they go through this whole procedure where there's a committee and everyone has to be on board, because then you're probably going to get the right thing going forward for the sport. And GC is right about the median ratings on the placed horses as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why the long distance cup isn't a Group 1 yet. And obviously York want a Group 1 every day of the EBOR Festival. That's why they're pushing for the 7 furlong Group 1. And Champions Day want every race on Champions Day to be a Group 1 by the Balmoral Handicap, and that's why they're pushing so hard for the Long Distance Cup. And when you look at the winners for both of the races over the last 5 years, you'd probably argue that they could be Group 1s, but it's the placed horses as well. And I think they've both got to keep pushing to get that quality up, get that standard up, and it will happen in the future. The Commonwealth Cup, obviously they took a big punt introducing this race as a Group 1. Was it back in 2015? That's quite unusual to bring a new race in and give it Group 1 status straight away. And Royal Ascot can't rest on the laurels. They've got to make sure this standard's maintained. And I think when you look at the early years, it absolutely did, with Muhara and Caravaggio, quite Reflection advertised. But perhaps that median level of the first three or four home has just dropped in recent years. So you can see why they're looking at it. But hopefully it stays a Group 1, because I think it's been a brilliant sort of, thing to bring in for the 3-year-old sprinters, and that whole new program for the 3-year-old sprinters is excellent in my view.
Wouldn't it attract the same field if it was a Group 2 though? The smart 3-year-old sprinter is going to go there, whether it's a Group 2 or a Group 1, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm guessing that's why they're looking at it. But it'd be a shame to take a Group 1 away from Royal Ascot. I mean, I think it's held its own this race, and I just think they need to make sure it continues to do so.
Suppose it might reduce the appeal for American challengers if it didn't have Group 1.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a factor, perhaps.
Okay, on to this weekend then, and we're going to be operating on, soft conditions again. It's likely to be very testing at Haydock GC. 1 or 2 heavy ground specialists are in town for the Grand National Trial, and they've salvaged this Mare's Hurdle as well, listed race with You Wear It Well. What do you make of Saturday's card?
Yeah, I think it'll be on. I think we would need substantial rain for the next few days to put it in real jeopardy, famous last words. But it hasn't been that bad. It did rain a fair bit through the night. Not too bad now. I'm hoping it'll be on, and I think it'll be deep. I haven't done the entire card. A few thoughts. That Victor Ludorum is pretty thin. The Salver is 8-13 for Gary Moore. Impressive for Chepstow. It should impress again. I'm looking forward. I'm not a big fan of 3-mile deep ground hurdle races. They're not my forte, but I am looking forward to seeing Nemean Lion given a chance at 3 miles if Kerry Lee decides to go that way. Sounds Russian, one of the real northern success stories of last winter. He's got a couple of engagements at Haydock, one in the Rendlesham and one in an Albert Bartlett race later on the card. The national trial, I've not done a deep dive. I've had a reasonable look at it, and I thought that My Silver Lining was so good at Warwick in that classic chase. She jumped beautifully. She stays very well. She's not an exposed horse over marathon distances. That was her first run beyond 3 miles 1, I think. So the way she won that race, beating a smart one, Pair Clear, suggests that, is it a £5 rise?
Yeah.
That's very fair. And the one horse I'm going to put up as a one to keep an eye on is in the Potemps qualifier. Another 3-mile hurdle grind, and it's the excellently named Cuthbert Dibble, one for the old Trumpton fans here. If you're of a certain age, you'll know. If you're not, you might be familiar with the phrase Pew, Pew, Barney McGrew, Cuthbert, Dibble and Grubb. 2 of the firemen, 6 stalwart firemen from Trumpton. But salute to Captain Flack, who kept them all in order. But have a look at this horse and the way he won at Chepstow. It wasn't a bad race. He absolutely dotted in. He's up 8 pounds, but again, he's a very, very unexposed horse over staying distances. And I did like, he ran in the EBF final at Sandown last spring. And this is a real indicator of what sort of bloke Sam Twiston Davis is, because it didn't go his way that day. And if you look at the quote section on the Racing Post website, Sam Twister says, after he won at Chepstow, I gave Cuthbert Dibble a terrible ride in the EBF final. I watched the race back every now and again just to kick myself and remind me why we ride the horses the way we do. Blah, blah, blah. Tucked him in, ended up too far back. It didn't go his way. But he said, I'd have been incredibly disappointed if he was beaten at Chepstow, because we'd rate him far, far better than a mark of 125 in the yard. He'll have tougher assignments in future, blah, blah, blah. He's gone up £8, but it might not stop him. And whether he's going to be a Pertemps final contender, I don't know. But Saturday might be a good day for Cuthbert Dibble to shine again.
He'll love the deep ground, GC, won't he? Is it a 1
very
point winner?
complicated. Yeah.
1 point win. There's a couple of Irish horses in that in the trial. Billy, there's a Cromwell horse, isn't there, in there? There, Gordon's got Where It All Began, and then obviously Mouse Morris has entered up one in the Pertemps qualifier. That's Franciscan Rock. Anything catching you right there?
Yeah, I think like Gordon or Gavin Cromwell has been a regular visitor to the UK this year, and he sends a couple of interesting horses, or at least he has a couple of interesting horses entered. I think Man would be very interesting in the Grand National trial. The way he was staying on at the finish of his race the last day would suggest the step up to 3.5 mightn't inconvenience him. So he's one that would have to be interesting. And he runs a very interesting horse he possibly runs a very interesting horse in the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle, a horse called Mint Boy, who is, he's probably going to be coming out top on time form ratings if he runs in the race. He won a 3 mile handicap, I think, in Ireland last time out. Won quite nicely. He's an improving horse, and he'll certainly set a reasonable standard. I'm not saying that there won't be something in the race that'll improve past him, but he'll take a bit of beating if he does turn up there, I think.
He's about 16 to 1 for the Albert Bartlett itself.
Just noting, Matt, that Cuthbert Dibble's also entered at Ascot. So he has the option of going to Ascot as well over 2.5, I think.
Okay, Ascot is the next stop. That's obviously the Betfair Ascot Chase, the Grade 1 this weekend. We're probably looking at 3, 4, 5 runners, maybe. GC, I think you might have mentioned on our podcast plan what can be done, if anything. Well, we can't make them all handicaps, can we? These races.
No, but I jotted this list down in pencil yesterday, and I probably missed 1 or 2. This is just since the turn of the year. 4 in the Game Spirit, 5 in the Denman, 5 in another one that I can't read in pencil, 6 in the Cotswold, 5 in the Clarence House, 6 in the Fleur de Lis, 5 in the Lightning, 5 in the Hampton, 5 in the Sauvignon Conti, and is it only 5 in the Ascot Chase at the 5-day stage? So if you think that is sustainable over a long period, then you're looking through a very, very, very jaundiced lens indeed. Something has to be done, and I'd refer you to Kevin Blake's piece. He's banged his drum for ages, and he admits it's not going to happen because things don't happen in a radical way in racing. But making quite a few of these races and some novice races, high quality handicaps with a significant weight range has to be worth a try. It carries risks, because trainers of some of the real good horses might just say, yeah, we're not giving 15, 20 pounds to up and comers. We're just going to, have 2, 3 runs in the entire season. But when I give you that list, and that's 10 races since the turn of the year, the new year's
not including Ireland.
Sorry?
And that's not including Ireland.
Exactly. That's pretty much the 10 best chases we've had here in the UK, Billy, since the turn of the year. And not one of them's even attracted a 7-runner field, let alone 8.
No.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you have all those other opportunities in Ireland as well that you haven't mentioned there as well. So there is an abundance of opportunities for these horses at the moment.
Yeah.
It is good to see L'Empresse here, Scoop. Now, we're all a bit guilty of recency bias, but this horse was flavour of the month, really, when he came back and won and looked like a work in progress. Obviously, a little bit rusty at Lingfield in that small runner Fleur de Lis. But good to see him back out again so quickly. He is going back on a right-handed track, and that would set a few alarm bells for me. He came to Ascot as a youngster, as a graduation chase. If you go back and watch that race, he went really out to his left at a lot of the fences, and especially so in the home straight. And he probably can't get away with doing that against a horse like Peak Dory, who is dead straight, isn't he?
No, and he went out to his left in the King George as well, didn't he, when he unseated and sustained that injury, which kept him off the track for nearly 400 days. So he's an interesting one, him going right-handed. Listen, we saw Shishkin, didn't we, dominate this race last year, slamming the 162 rated Pete Dory by 16 lengths and advertising his credentials as a staying chaser. And, L'Empresse gets the chance to do the same here. Pete Dory, very consistent horse, still rated 162. This type of test exactly what he thrives on. If Lompressy can beat him in a similar sort of way to what Shishkin did a year ago, then he suddenly becomes, a leading contender for top honours. So really interested to see him, how he's going to fare second start back after a long absence on a right-handed track. But he is the standout performer this weekend.
Yeah, quick line, GC, on the leaden-footed. The Lucinda Russell trained at Ahoy Senior. He's dropping back in trip as well.
Yeah, he's not done too much racing going right-handed over the last couple of years. And he seemed to be running pretty well when the tack went wrong at Cheltenham last time. But he needs to jump fluently to beat horses like this, to beat Pic D'Orhy and Lompressy if he's on his A game. But no, only 5 runners. One of them a complete no-hoper by the look of it. But the other 4 are all pretty smart. I don't know whether Fakir Dudaris will come over. I would think it's somewhat unlikely, just 13 days after a dull run, wouldn't you?
Exactly. He's had a couple of runs in handicaps as well now, hasn't he, Billy? Any word from Ireland?
No, I have no idea whether he'll run or not, Matt. But as GC said, he hasn't pulled up any trees in his 2 runs so far this season. So even if he does run, it'd be hard to see him winning it.
And the other one is Sail Away, who I thought could be running here. He was entered up at Kelso as well. It hasn't been declared for Friday, so he could be running here as a sneaky way to maybe get his handicap mark up above the current 142 and into the Grand National. He's got an entry at Aintree in April. He's just a little bit on the cusp at the minute, so he might be a good bit of placing from the Skeltons to get him up and get him into that. What else have we got coming up this weekend? We have got plenty of action again in Ireland. Gowran, Billy, on Saturday. This is the Red Mills Chase takes centre stage, and then Punchestown's Grand National Trial, which I always make the mistake thinking that's the trial for Aintree, but that's Punchestown's trial for the Irish Grand National. Am I right?
That's correct, yeah. Possibly some very interesting racing in Ireland this weekend, Matt. Now, I'm sure a lot is going to depend on the passing of Maureen Mullins and whether Willie is actually, will he run his horses over the weekend? This is certainly the Gordon meeting, the Red Mills Trial meeting is a meeting that he has targeted in the past with horses as a warm-up for Cheltenham. So hopefully he does run them. Really, really interesting Red Mills Trial Chase. There's only about 4 or 5 entered, but one of them is Fernie Hollow, who we might see back on the track again. I saw his name in the entries for Cheltenham, which I was surprised at. But the fact that he's entered here at the 5-day stage would suggest that he's pretty close to a return. So would be brilliant to see him if he does come back to the track on Saturday. He's got Zarak the Brave as well in the Red Mills Trial Hurdle. And on Sunday, like you said, at Punchestown, there's potentially a fascinating novices hurdle. Willie has 4 in the race, but the best 2 would appear to be Tully Hill and Western Diego. They're taking on a horse of Gordon Elliott's called Gigaro, who finished second to Mystical Power last time out, and a horse of Eddie O'Grady's called No Flies on Him, or is it No Flies on Me? One or the other. Won a really competitive maiden hurdle at Leopardstown over Christmas. Looked very good. That form has worked out well since. So that'll be a fascinating race. I see Willie has an expensive, I think about 300 grand ex-pointer entered in the bumper, running in the Rich Ritchie colours, horse called Port Julien. Won a point in December, so he'd be very interesting. And in the Grand National Trial, it's wide open. One name that kind of jumped out at me, Matt, was My Immortal at Barry Connell's. I think the step up to 3.5 might really suit that horse and looks on a fair mark. So he'd be one I'd be very interested in if he does run. But all in all, it should be a fascinating weekend's racing in Ireland. And like I said, hopefully the Mullins horses will run. But obviously that's, they have bigger things on their mind this week.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, My Immortal handicap debut potentially there, a bit of a baptism of fire for him in the Grand National Trial. Scoop, anything else to mention across the weekend? Any other horses catching your eye anywhere you like?
Well, I always like the Reinerstown at Ascot, Matt. That's normally a good pointer to spring events for the staying chasers, novice staying chasers, and we've got Apple Away for Lucinda Russell, getting the sex allowances on Saturday. She's dead interesting, isn't she? Having finished second to Grey Dawning last time at Warwick, was well beaten that day, but on a previous start she'd looked one to follow, and if she gets good soft ground, she's probably the one to beat in that race. Although there's other strands of form as well, the Brave Kingdom form, and Kilbeg King, who we mentioned earlier, was third at Kempton at Christmas, so that should be another good point to the Reinerstown.
Definitely, yeah. I think Lucinda Russell is going to be a trainer to follow in the coming weeks as well. The yard just looks to be really clicking into form. So I expect Appleway to win that Riddlesdown personally. But okay, that is just about all we got time for. Doesn't time fly? I'm not sure I've done enough to keep Dave Ord out of the side. So I'm sure he'll be back to steer the ship next week if available. But I very much enjoyed your company again this week, gents. Many thanks to you and to you loyal listeners as well. And we'll see you again very soon.
Visit sportinglife.com for more analysis, tips, opinion and insight.